Welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to be giving you a tour of my home climbing wall here in my garage. It is a project that I started earlier this year and it's finally done. And I'm actually planning on clearing all the holds off the walls soon so I can add some volumes and clean the wall and stuff. I have a brand new set. So before I do that, I wanted to show you guys what it looks like in a pretty filled out state. Here's what's going to happen in this video. We're going to go through the design. I'm going to show you all the different angles and like what I envisioned and how it turned out. Then we're going to climb a few warm-up routes, and then I got some new holds in that I have not put on the wall yet, and I'm going to go ahead and put those on the wall and do a little bit of route setting, and then we're going to see if we can climb it. I don't know if it's going to be an easy or a hard route. We'll see how the holds feel and where there's space for them. So let me show you guys the design. All right, so this is what it looks like from the corner of the garage, and I think I have a 3D, like an old 3D SketchUp model when I first started prototyping designs and stuff from this angle. And actually, I think I have a better one from this angle over here. Here we go. It's kind of too wide to fit in the entire phone frame, but there it is from one garage door to the back side of the garage. And let's actually start over here, because this, you may or may not recognize it. If you saw my April Fool's video where I did an office tour, it was actually in this room right here, and that room is now a bathroom. So it's got a sink, big old utility sink. We can hopefully wash some holds in here, and a toilet, and it is just in a sliding door, which works for the climbing wall. But it is just barely big enough to fit an actual functional bathroom. So that way we don't have to, bring all the chalk into the house to wash our hands and stuff after a climbing session. So we got the doorway. So I think this is about like a 10-degree overhang from bottom to top. You can see that angle there. And then we do have holds and T-nuts and stuff inside the door frame, which add for some interesting features for some climbs. Then that leads us into the cave, which is a cave because it's got a roof, and the roof climbing is super fun and challenging. And I think that's like a 32-degree overhang there, vertical wall there. I believe that this kind of corner piece here is like 17 degrees or so, and that is on the side of a 45-degree overhang. And then you can see those kicker panels there. That's actually because there's an I-beam coming through. You can see these I-beams in the roof here. So each one of these overhangs has an I-beam that is covered with a functional kicker. Then after the 45-degree wall, this is about 12 feet wide here. Then we got a 10-foot wide 30-degree wall. And then it has this feature right here, which is just a 90-degree feature that adds for some pretty interesting climbing as well. And then this 30-degree overhang also has a kicker. And I'll give you the angle from this side. There you go. You can see the two different angles, 45 and 30 right there. And then I believe that this connecting corner is about like 8 degrees, like 7 to 8 degrees. It's not like precise, but it just ended up being around that much. We have our garage door opening thing here, and I wanted to make sure that if you fell off of that, you weren't going to be falling into that. So if I made it further this way, that would be a hazard. But there, we've never had anybody get even close to that, but I still padded it up with some foam and stuff and tape. And then another vertical wall right here, and even added this protective panel here because we have the garage door sensor, and I did not want people kicking the garage door sensor and misaligning it. So those are all the different angles of the wall. And then when it comes to the paint design, I had a friend help me with that, and I mainly came up with design for these sections, and then she helped me with this section and like that section over there, which is pretty cool. And then I settled on these colors. I was very particular about the colors because I wanted to make sure that the colors and the design wasn't too heavy and distracting when it comes to being able to see the holds. I wanted to choose like a color that wasn't going to be the same color as the holds, and most of my blue holds are like this kind of dark blue. So I chose like a more light blue for the main base coat, and then even that other blue is still a lighter blue than, because like that right there is a blue hold. That's a blue hold. Like those, that's a blue hold. So not the same color blue, so it's easy to spot all the holds. And then more of like a lighter orange as well. I was gonna go red because I like red, but then it seemed a little bit too much contrast and too distracting. I just didn't want it to be that distracting. And then we have for padding, this was a logistical nightmare to try to figure out, but I ended up getting this like gymnastics foam as like a base layer that is laid out on the ground from this corner straight to the side of the garage door. Well, actually, no, it's right at the, well, it goes a little bit into the garage door right over there. So there's a base layer of that, which for like the slab areas where you're not going super high and you're not falling on your back, that's pretty good. And then these are all DIY pads, which is essentially mattress toppers glued together. You can just see we've got just layers of foam. And those are just glued together so they will not get all misaligned and stuff. And then these are actually just mattress storage covers. They're like cheap, they're used for like moving mattresses, and they make for great mattress covers. The only downside is the seams you gotta be careful of. I tried my best with like some of these to try to cover up the seams, but if you land in a seam, especially with climbing shoes, you can kind of sink in, so you got to be careful with that, and that's kind of why I wanted that base layer of the gymnastics padding down underneath. I also have these lights installed here, especially for the cave, but also behind me, you can see a set right there, and you'd be surprised how big of a difference they make. If I go ahead and turn off just those lights, and I leave the ceiling lights on, this is what it looks like. So this is just with the ceiling lights, and there's a lot of ceiling lights. There's 2 whole rows of ceiling lights going all the way through the whole garage. Those ones help light up the cave especially, and even the rest of the wall just comes that much brighter. I also did have, like, this entire garage was redone. There was like nothing in here other than trash before this. So all of these shelves got installed for storage. There's a whole workshop area over there, which we're going to be using to make more stuff for the climbing wall. I got this warm-up section and training section over here with a pull-up bar. We got a hang board for warming up the fingers. Even like an anchor building, like rope skills practice thing here. Pinch blocks for pin strength and all that. Got all my hold bins here with holes that are unused as of now for the current sets. Bunch of footholds here. Yeah, all kinds of stuff. And then yeah, the reason why we're doing the reset mainly is because up here are a bunch of volumes ready to go to get put on the wall. And those are super nice because it helps give the wall more angles, more variety. So if you put a volume on this 45-degree wall, you'll then have non-45 angles, which allow you to put different holds that wouldn't be usable on the 45. They can be usable on a volume. And then same thing with the roof too. We can use different holds on the roof if we get some volumes on the roof as well. So we're gonna be taking all these holds down, slapping all those volumes on the wall to change it, and then we're gonna be doing a whole bunch more route setting. So a fun little thing is I got an order of these lime green, kind of like pinchy, edgy holds here. So I'm excited for this video to actually set a route with these and see how they climb and how they feel. But before we get to route setting, let's do some warm-ups on the wall. I'll show you some of the easier routes that I put up. There's not a whole lot of easy routes on the wall right now, but there's some that are not super hard, and those are the ones I tend to warm up on. Alright, so I'm trying my best to give you guys a good angle here, because one of the warm-ups I like to do, especially for like my forearm and my endurance and stuff, are all of these white handles you see. They're like straight up handle holds. This is a hold traverse that goes from this side of the wall all the way down to the other side of the wall and over the roof and everything. And you can use any feet, it's just you have to use the handles as you're going through, and the only exception is a big white flake. So it's all just the big white holds. So I'm gonna start off warming up on that, and then we could do some more fingery warm-ups after that. All right, I hope you guys caught most of that. That's definitely good. Gets the breath flowing a little bit, gets the forearms warmed up. But because they're big old handles, they don't really get the fingers warmed up quite as much. So we're gonna head over to the hangboards, do a little bit of a finger warm up before getting on more of the fingery routes on the wall. All right, so I gave myself a few minutes of rest to recover from the traverse. So we're gonna do a couple of hangs on the hangboard. I like to use the 20 mil edge and just do like 5 to 7 second dead hangs and then a couple seconds rest, and then do that a couple of times. And then maybe I'll do some like scapular pull-ups and some pull-ups to get my shoulders and stuff more warmed up as well. All right, I'm feeling pretty decent from that. I'm gonna give myself another minute or two to rest before getting on some of the easier overhanging routes that have some smaller, more fingery holds. Okay, so the route I'm gonna warm up on is this dark green. So you can see these dark green holds, not to be confused with like these mint green, or even like there's some lime green over there. So the green tape marks the 2 starts. So I'm gonna have left hand here, right hand here. I got a tiny foot right there, got a foot over there. And you can see these holds, although they're pretty juggy, meaning like they're pretty like big, they're not really deep. So you can see I can get like just about like a pad and a half of my fingers like down to about here. And then this one, not too bad. Going up to this one with my right hand, this one's pretty good. And then this one up here, you got one there, and you get the top right there with the same color green tape. So let's get on this route and have some fun. So I guess I should explain, if you're actually pretty new to climbing or you've never seen or done climbing, at least indoors like we are right now. Depends on the gym you're at, but the way I have it set up here is the color of the holds is the intended route. So although I could just use any holds on the wall, sometimes the routes are set up with an intended type of difficulty or an intended movement. They're like levels essentially. And this level requires that you follow a specific path, which is the dark green holds. And all of the other color holds are also their own levels, which have their own difficulties. And the goal is to start at the bottom, and then when you get to the top, you actually have to finish it in control with both hands on the finish hold. So that is my goal, to get up to the dark green hold up there and get both hands on it in control. I should probably put my climbing shoes on. Actually, you know what? Let me try it without, this isn't supposed to be a warm-up, but let me see how it feels without climbing shoes. The holds are good, but I'm wearing Crocs right now, which are like the worst climbing shoe. The footholds are not that good. Especially like, you can see that dark green here, pretty small. So we'll see how this goes. This is definitely gonna be more challenging. All right, here we go. First move. Next move. Trying not to use any of the wrong holds here. Okay, this move is probably going to be the hardest one because of that foothold there. There we go. And then touch it under control. All right, that actually wasn't as hard as I expected to in Crocs. It's because it's mostly the hand holds are just that good. You don't need good feet. All right, so up next I'm on the 45 overhang, and I'm gonna be doing one of the easier routes on this one, but it is definitely not easy. It's just, compared to everything else, it is relatively easier. And it is just the white holds. So we got a white foot down the bottom right here. This is your start hold. You need to start with both hands on this hold. And then we got a white hold here, white hold here, white hold here, and then it ends on the top jug, the top handle right there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 holds on the entire route, and that includes for both your hands and your feet. The traverse that I did is the only route that you can use anything for feet. Everything else you have to use the colors themselves. So similar rules as with the top, you have to establish control to finish the route. You also have to establish control to start the routes. So I can't, even though I can reach this hold from here, I can't reach this hold until I have both hands here and I'm completely off the ground. So I gotta pull my butt off the ground before I reach to that hold. So here we go. And that's the finish. All right, not feeling too bad. Feeling like I'm adequately warmed up. So I guess what I'll do, I don't want to go too hard today because I'm going outdoors tomorrow morning and I want to make sure I save myself for that. But I guess I'll show you guys a couple of my more challenging routes, and then we'll get to setting a new route. Okay, so one of my favorite routes that I set recently is this pink one that goes all the way up and around here. So you can see where the tape is up there, that is the end. And the start is down here. Let me show you some of these holds. So you're gonna be starting matched on this hold right here, which is pretty deep, but remember we're on the 45-degree overhang. You got a pretty hard move up to this one, and then you gotta go into like an undercling here, and you gotta do almost like a blind reach around this arete here, grabbing this, working your way up, side pulling on these, going through really awkward transition, getting through here. It's a really endurance-y route and very, very fingery as well. So I think instead of wasting a bunch of energy climbing stuff I've already climbed, I have footage of these climbs that I'm gonna splice in as well. Another one of my favorites is this purple climb right here, because of this hold in particular is one of the cooler holds that I have, in my opinion. You can see it's just got all of these different features in it and so many different ways to grab it. And I wanted to try to set a route that uses as much of that as possible. It's a pretty gnarly start. It starts with this very bad undercling right here, which it's slopey on the inside. As you can see, it's not very like in cut because it slopes out, and you can only really get this deep in it. And then you have this right one over here for your right hand, which is also pretty slopey. It's not very in cut. So you got to kind of get a lot of tension or compression between those two, and then you got a foot right there. You come out to this big slopey thing as well, and then you got to figure out how to work your way past this. And then there's a hidden giant hold out on the side here to help you get compression. And then the finish hold is also very, very slopey. So matching that is also quite a challenge. But one of my favorite routes that I've set, and that's been up there for a while. So another iconic route on the wall because of this hold right here, we got this amazing looking skull hold with like a bullet hole feature in its head. This is actually where the bolt hole goes to attach it to the wall. But then you, of course, you screw elsewhere on the hold to keep it more stable so it doesn't spin around the bolt. But this thing is also extremely slopey. Like, it's impossible to use this on the 30-degree wall. It's on the 30-degree wall, but like, it's not impossible. It's just above my ability. But the side of the eye socket, you can see where all the chalk is. It's not too bad, but I set a really cool route where you got to use this foot chip, and you can kind of between your foot and your knee, you can jam into the eye socket here to get some stability. So that was kind of the big move that I tried to set for that route there. And then because it's a skull, I wanted to have a bunch of bones and stuff. So a friend of mine actually 3D printed these bones, which make for some really interesting, unique holds, because you would think you would grab them like this, but it's really hard on this angle. So these stick out just a little bit more. So you can kind of like grab them in this way. So grabbing them like this actually works a lot better than trying to treat it as like a crimp or a pinch. So that makes those pretty interesting. And then these starting holds are actually vertebra. And these make some great underclings here. So that was the Halloween themed route that we set for Halloween. And that was a really fun climb as well. So I guess it would be a good idea to show off some of my favorite climbs on each section of the wall. So over here, we actually have this white slab climb. So these jugs do not count. These are just for the traverse. So if it's a white hold for a different climb, these are probably off unless they're marked otherwise. So this one starts, these are also 3D printed holds by the same friend. So you got these, you got them for like foot down here, foot there. And then I put a bunch of them together to create this really interesting feature here, which makes it really difficult to try to figure out how to use. I actually use like my right hand here and then my left hand here, and I'm pulling out to try to create counter pressure to try to hold myself on the wall, because I have to do a dynamic move up to that pocket. And not only that, but when I catch that pocket, I then have to swap this hand precision into here so I can compress between those two holds to not fall off the wall. There is also a starting foot down over there. And then there's some interesting moves when you're using these to try to get your feet up from there to there. And then the finish is kind of also iconic. It is a pig face where you're putting your fingers in the nostrils of the pig hold. So that's just a super fun climb. Also super challenging. It took me like months to actually get this one move. I just on and off would try it and would fail over and over and over again until it finally stuck. So I've already showed you a couple of 30-degree wall climbs. Now on the 45, we did the warm-up climb, but as far as harder routes on this that I'm proud of, one of the newer ones I set is this mint green pinchy route that starts there on that big old block pinch. Let me show you what that thing looks like up close. So this is just a fat hold. Like you're grabbing it just like this. Like there's no it's just straight flat on both sides. There's no in cut to it at all. You're just pinching and pulling as much as you can on that. And you're going out to, this one is in cut as you can see. So you can actually kind of get your hands around it like a handle almost, but it's just not quite that deep. And then you're going up to this thing right here. And then you get a big move from there to there. It's hard to tell from down here, but you got one hand here, you got one hand here, and then you got like a foot there, and you got to throw right up to that, and it's the same thing, just a big old block pinch. And then not only that, but the end is also not that juggy either, so matching the end was really, really hard. It took me a few sessions to get that one. Now, perhaps one of the most infamous climbs for me is there's a roof climb that goes from there all the way through the roof on these gray holds, and it ends matched right there. So when this wall was first built and it was just wooden and not painted, that was one of the first climbs I set, and I could never get the send on it. I could never complete the climb with a controlled finish. So after we took all the holds down to paint the entire wall, I actually took pictures of this climb and reset it exactly the same way because I was determined to get it. I knew it could go. It was just so hard though that I didn't have enough time before we painted. So it starts over here, and even the start is pretty crimpy. You got these holds and they're all just like this. Remember, this is 32 degrees overhanging, and you're climbing up these gray holds. Here's another one right here. That one's actually not too bad. And you got this one right here. And then you just have this awkward transition where you're kind of going upside down, falling into that. But yeah, you'll guys see it in the send video. I also had a couple of good falls on it as well. But it finally went down after literally months of working it. And then when it comes to this doorway feature, I actually have a climb that I set that just uses the doorway pretty much. So it's a yellow climb. So you start matched on this. So that's a challenge in and of itself, is trying to figure out how to get both hands there and your feet off the ground and be in control. But you have a yellow foot here, and a yellow foot here, and a yellow foot here. And you got no yellow handholds between there and over here. So I actually set this climb with some yellow handholds going through the door, and then I kept trying to eliminate handholds to see how much can I just rely on the door and then the yellow footholds, and eventually I was able to remove all of them. But once you get here, then you have a transition onto the 30-degree overhang, and you have to end there. All right, I think it's time to set a new route, so let's open up these holds, feel them, and see what it inspires. All right, so I got all the holds opened, and I got to admit, they are more difficult than I was expecting. And the reason being is that they are not very in-cut. They are pretty slopey feeling on both sides. But like this side especially, very, like if you imagine this on an overhang, this is gonna be so hard to grab onto. And then this side on an overhang is not gonna be that much better. So overall, most of the holds are pretty much kind of similar in their angles. They have one good side and one bad side for the most part. This one is actually a little bit more positive. I don't know if you can see down here. It's a little bit more in-cut down there. So when it comes to setting this, I like to try to make sure that my routes are all independent from each other. So these are lime green, and I do have other lime green routes on the wall. So what I want to do is I want to look for a space where I don't have any lime green that's going to interfere if I set this route. It might affect other routes if I'm too close to them. So looking at my wall, I already have a lime green route over here on the right slab. I have a lime green route on the right half of the 35. I have a lime green route that ends here and it starts down there. It kind of goes up and around like that. So there is space like on this section of the wall, like the left half of the 30 and the right quarter of the 45, and like on that arete feature there. I don't have any lime green holds on this section, but I do have lime green holds on this section. I also don't have any lime green holds on that overhang there. So there could be a route that goes there, or there could be a route that goes here. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start feeling the holds to see how they feel when I grab them, because you can't really tell that well by looking at them how good they're gonna feel on what angle. So just by pinching them and grabbing them, I can tell this one feels really positive right here. So this is one of the better ones for a steeper angle, and I'm gonna start putting them on this. And these are going to be like my chosen holds that I'm going to use for the route. So some of these, like this one is absolutely terrible for a handhold on any steep angle. Just by looking at it, you can even see just how sloped that is and how sloped that is. So and how shallow it is too. So this will make a good foothold, but this will make a terrible handhold on any angle other than like vertical. So I don't want something to be impossible for me to do right now for the video. I'm hoping I can actually climb the route I set for you guys. Sometimes it takes me a while to climb the routes if I set it too hard, but I'm trying not to set it too hard. But I don't even think I can set too easy if I'm going to be on any of these angles here. So we'll see what happens. So I'm going to try to organize the good holds up top for the hands, up with the feet down the bottom. So these smaller holds I'm probably going to mostly use for feet, but as you get higher up the route, your hand holds can also turn into footholds. So that's an interesting thing to consider when you're thinking about setting a route. You're basically setting a body puzzle. When you're setting the puzzle, you have to anticipate the pieces that you've placed affecting your plans later on. Because you can't just say, you use this as a hand, you're not allowed to use it as a foot, because that's just not how climbing generally works. But there are a lot of holds that you can set in a way that you can use them as a hand, but not as a foot. So for example, this, if I set it up vertical like this on the wall, it'd be really easy to pinch it. But if you're above it, it'd be very hard to stand on it, because where you grab it is on the sides, but you can't really stand on the sides. So you could potentially set this to be used as a hand that you can't use well as a foot. You might be able to use it a little bit up here, but it's just going to be really insecure and potentially slippery. All right, so I think I got the holds I'm going to use chosen right here. So now we need to prepare them to get put on the wall. So the reason why I like to put them on this white panel is so I can carry them all together really easily. So now that I've chosen the holds, I need to make sure I choose the bolts to go in the holds. So I got a bunch of different size bolts, like different lengths, some of them ridiculously long because some holds are very, very deep. This size is like pretty standard. It should fit pretty much any hold. So I'm just going to go ahead and prepare them by getting the bolts ready. That way when I want to put them on the wall, the bolts are already with the holes. All right, so now I'm going to get my tools ready for setting. So I like to have this on me because it gives me a belt to put the my impact drill on. And then this is what I use. We got a couple of different hex bits and then some switch out ones because there's different size hexes depending on what you're using. This is the smaller one, but we're going to be using just the bigger one for these holds here. And then if I need to put any screws in, which I will for these longer ones especially, because you're going to be pulling off center from where it is attached. If you're pulling directly centered on the hold, then sometimes you don't need to put extra screws in for stability. But if you're pulling off center, you're going to get a lot of leverage and the hold's likely to spin on the wall, even though it's bolted on. So the screws prevent spinning. And then I got another bit on here for just the screws. Oh, and I like to have a hand Allen wrench as well, just in case I want to do hand tightening, because I can tell better with hand tightening if it is too tight or not tight enough. All right, let's bring this to the wall and get setting. All right, I think I've chosen my location. I'm going to work up this feature here, and one of the reasons being is that this angle is going to make some of these holds be a little bit easier to use, whereas this angle is going to be extremely hard. I'm going to try to combine them both so that they're going to kind of balance each other out a little bit. But even on this right here, because it's like 90 degrees, if you're just pulling 90 degrees against the hold, it's really, really solid. Whereas if you're pulling 45 degrees, you're just coming right off. But this edge becomes from really impossible and bad to use to amazing to use just by changing the angle like that. The difficult thing is going to be trying to figure out the footwork on this. Also, this is the hardest time to be setting on the wall because it is the most full of holes it's ever been, which means my options become a little bit more limited. This takes up a lot of space. There's a lot of holes that are already taken up because I gotta find spots to bolt these in these holes. And you can see, like, even right here, my angle is limited because of the size of this hold. It will interfere with that hold at certain angles. So what hold I choose is going to make a difference on how well it's going to fit. So let's see what we come up with. So I think I found my starting position. This hold fits just barely. If I use this T-nut right here, it's going to fit really well right there. So I'm going to have that be the match start. So you're going to start 2 hands on that hold. And then I got to figure out where you're going because suddenly the holes run out here. So perhaps we gotta come out to a hold on this side, in which case I'm gonna have to find one of my better holds, my more positive ones, and then maybe you can grab onto this and then bump this hand up over here somehow. It's gonna be hard. This might be a hard route. All right, this is gonna be a really interesting one. So I'm feeling we get from here, we get to here, and then what my body is kind of feeling naturally is if I have these 2 holds, I'm doing like a compression. This one's pretty good, but only if I'm pulling in this direction. If I'm pulling in this direction, you can see I'm just gonna slip right off. So in order to let go of this hand without slipping off of this hand immediately, I need to be able to get my body over here. In order to do that, I'm gonna have to push off the wall over there somewhere. So I'm feeling like if I get a foothold right here, I might be able to make that body position work without coming off the wall, but it's going to require a lot of tension. So I'm going to use this little hold here and put it exactly where I just pointed. So then hopefully with the foot there, I'll be able to just bump this hand up to another good hold and be saved from falling off this hold. Tempted to use this really long, thin one. This one seems like it'll be fun, and you could probably like match both hands on it, start walking up a little bit. So I'm gonna try to test the problem here that I expect to happen. I think with this hold, I'm not really gonna need a screw to stabilize it, but this hold, if I grab here and pull, that's what happens without a screw. So that means I'm gonna have to use, they have these screw holes built into most holds. So I'll do that really quick just to demonstrate. So I swap out bits here, get myself one of my screws, put it right here. And now, the obligatory, that's not going anywhere. So I'm running into an issue where, not really an issue, just a challenge, where when I said earlier about a handhold being used as a foothold, but it's a handhold that I would want to be used as a foothold, isn't gonna work that well. So this starting hold is gonna be great for my hands, but once I get up to here and here, it's gonna be terrible for a foot because I wanna put the foot here, but it's not gonna go here. There might be enough room to like, maybe get my heel like up on that, but it's gonna be very uncomfortable and it's not exactly what I wanna do right now. So I might need to add like a foothold really close over here that I can actually push off on. So I'm gonna take this really bad hold that was really slopey on both sides. I'm gonna see if I can use that as a little help for the feet. So there, that should make a huge difference. Once I'm here, I can get a foot up there and continue up on this. All right, so now I'm getting high enough where I can't reach, so I gotta get a ladder and do some stuff I do not recommend. This is not the right way to use a ladder, but this is the way I'm gonna use a ladder because it's just going to be really difficult to use the ladder the right way. Don't worry, I have extensive circus training standing on top of very unstable things like people. So I think that helps out with this. I'm a trained professional. Not in ladders, but in standing on unstable things. I'm literally a trained professional. The good news is, if I fall, there's a bunch of padding. So I just gotta figure out where I can fit this, because I kinda wanna put it right there, but I don't think that's gonna work. So I might just make like a longer section here. Yeah, this is gonna be a really good one. You might not be able to see it, but the hand that I put up here on the 45 is actually gonna become a really good foot because it's at a good angle. All right, so I think I'm gonna have this be the finish hold right here, but I need to make sure the angle isn't gonna be too hard to hold on to. So I think something more like that. It's gonna be slightly easier. It helps to have handholds to hold on to when I'm moving up and down the ladder on the unstable surface. All right, so I'm gonna hope that this route climbs well. I think it's pretty much ready and climbable. I hope it's climbable. Sometimes estimating your own body dimensions is hard. I'm gonna have my last foot that I put is like right here, and I'm hoping that I should be able to reach that no problem with my foot here. But you'd be surprised how deceptive distance can be when you start climbing on an overhang. Things that look close when you're just standing feel really far once you're sitting under it. And actually, I just realized I'm not done. I didn't put any starting feet. So I think right here will be plenty good enough. And then because I didn't put a step screw in this one to stabilize it, and I don't want to, I'm going to use my hand Allen wrench to make sure it's actually tight enough so that it doesn't spin when I'm stepping on it as a foot. All right, that should be good. There's such thing as over tightening too. If you tighten too much, you could actually break the T-nut that is holding it, and that would be a bad time. All right, let me give you guys a close-up first. So we're gonna have the start be two hands matched here. You got a foot there, and then from there, you're gonna make a left-hand move out to this thing, which is pretty crimpy. And then that is going to allow you to hopefully move your right hand up to this thing, which I think is going to feel pretty solid, but it's not the most positive, but it is good enough at this angle. Then once you get to that, you're hopefully going to be able to move your foot up to there, which is going to allow you to walk your hands up these ridges up to that. You'll eventually get your left foot on here so that you can get the finish. You might heel hook this for stability so you don't come flying off the wall when you're trying to get both hands on that hold. So that is the new route right there. Let's see how it climbs. All right, here goes nothing. All right, this part's already a lot harder than I expected. Oh, I have the foot over here. I forgot about that. Come on. That was a pretty hard move. Get the foot. There we go. My hip flexibility isn't that great. Whew, there it is. That was not graceful, but it was my first attempt trying to figure out exactly what the body positions are going to be. But I managed to flash it, which means I did it on my first try. But it's definitely sloppy. The footwork was really sloppy. But I don't know. I might try it again and see if I can make it look a little bit more graceful. Okay, I'm giving myself probably not as much rest as I should have, but we're going to try it again. And I'm going to see if I can do it without floundering around so much. I'm going to try a slightly different beta. And beta is just a term for like sequence. If I get my right foot here instead of my left foot on that hold, I'm gonna see if I can move my hand up here a little bit more statically instead of throwing so hard like I did. But I think it's gonna be really hard to hold on to just this during that movement either way, so it's probably not gonna make that much of a difference. But I might be able to flag with my other foot to keep from coming off the wall. We'll see. All right, here we go. Much better. Whew. All right. Felt like I knew what I was doing that time. Went down much more smooth, much more graceful. Yeah, I liked that a lot, and it felt fun. I'm really happy with how that route turned out. All right, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this home wall tour and route setting and showing off route climbing and all that stuff. That's one of the things I really like about this aspect. Having a home wall, especially one with so much variety, it adds a creative aspect to climbing, and as you guys know, as subscribers to my channel, it's all about creativity. I got chalk on my nose. But yeah, this adds a whole new dimension to climbing that I was never able to really get before, which is actually being creative with it, creating essentially like puzzles or levels for myself and my friends. I normally don't climb in here by myself. I normally invite friends over and we all just have a good time climbing and trying different routes and even setting routes for each other and stuff. So that's going to be happening again soon when we tear down all this stuff, put the volumes on, and there'll be a whole new set of routes to go up week after week. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more stuff like this on occasion, let me know. Probably wouldn't do it that often. I was considering doing it as like a members benefit or something, because I know that most people don't subscribe for this type of content, but I feel like if you're a member, then you're more interested in me than the average person, so you might be more interested in like the non-gaming stuff in my life. So let me know what you guys think about that. It definitely won't be like a regular scheduled thing. It just might be like the occasional one-off thing here and there. And I don't know, if it does well, then maybe it'll be a more regular thing. So let me know what you guys think about that, especially if you're already a member. Shout out to the members, and also shout out to 1 million subscribers, because you guys are what made my dream home possible, essentially. And yeah, you guys saw my office tour. Now you saw my garage tour. So if you guys enjoyed this, you're probably gonna enjoy some more stuff you can find on the channel right here on the end screen. Hope this video has earned your subscription. Anyway, this has been ScrapMan, and I'll see you next time. I'm still out of breath.